For those of you who are watching at home, welcome to the Laguna Woods Democratic Club's monthly meeting. And that was passed by Congress and signed by President Biden a year ago today. It was the single largest investment in fighting climate change in our history. And now I have two questions for you about that historic act. Just call out the answers. All right, what is the cap on the cost of insulin for seniors on Medicare? You are so well informed. That is absolutely right. And as a result of that act, the three largest manufacturers of insulin put the same cap on the insulin copay for everyone. Some of them not starting until January 2024, but nonetheless. So government does drive private industry. Okay, and the second question I have for all of you is, how many Republicans voted for that act? 0. Right again, okay? Today we have the pleasure of hearing Elahi Amani, who will speak on Woman, Life, Freedom, No Turning Back, a Historical Renaissance in Iran. Thank you to Cece Sloan for recommending her. Cece, I don't know, I didn't see Cece here, but well, Cece is here. Okay, thank you, Cece. Elahi Amani is a gender, peace, and human rights activist, as well as a trained mediator and conflict resolution specialist. She has been active in the global women's movement since 1985. That is a long time. And I will let Elahi explain the rest of her background herself. Please join me in welcoming Elahi Amani.
Thank you very much. I guess this is one of the special places that I don't have to fix the microphone. It's my height. Only in China, when I was giving a talk, people were my height. Thank you, Cece, for connecting me to the Democratic Club of Laguna Woods. Thank you very much, and thank you for your invitation. And hello and welcome to my Iranian American friends, and that they are here. On 16, is the voice good?
Get real close to the mic.
Okay. Okay. On 16 September 2022, Mahsa Amini, a 22-year-old woman from Saqqez in Iran's Kurdistan province, died in a Tehran hospital. 3 days earlier, she had been arrested by Iran's guidance patrol, or quote-unquote morality police. There is no morality into morality police, for wearing the hijab improperly, and fell into a coma after she was beaten inside the police van, taking her to the Wazara detention center. I have to mention the terminology of improper hijab among all the Muslim majority societies. It's only in Iran, improper hijab. So she had hijab, but the government felt her hijab was improper. Crowds gathered outside the hospital in a state of shock and responded to her death by calling for accountability. Soon, protests spread to other cities. During Amini's funeral on September 17, 2022, her anniversary is coming up soon, crowds gathered in Saqqez at Gina's funeral, and a voice cried out, "Jan Jian Azadi," in Kurdish, which means woman, life, freedom, or in Persian, Zan Zendagi Azadi. A protest slogan with history in Kurdish community that affirms that the rights of women are the center of life and liberty. Others in attendance began chanting the slogan, and women removed their headscarf, which is compulsory in Iran. The news struck a chord with Iranian people. Women and men took to the streets across Iran, outraged over the slew of social ills symbolized in Jina Amini death. I have to explain that Mahsa is a Persian name. Jina is a Kurdish name, but the government of Iran does not allow ethnic minority to name their kids in their ethnic language, in Kurdish. So Mahsa was registered in her birth certificate, but her true name in Kurdish was Jina. So outraged over the slew of social ills symbolized in Jina Amini's death, the subjugation of women, the repression of minorities, religious chauvinism, police brutality, and government corruption. Jina Amini was indeed the intersection of many repressions in Iran, a younger woman, Kurdish, and Sunni. In few days, people came together and the slogan began to echo from one city to another in Kurdish, Persian, Azeri, and Baluchi: woman, life, freedom. The slogan was adopted across the country and beyond Iranian borders in women's movement across the globe and in 6 million Iranians living in diaspora. Civil unrest spread across more than 140 cities in Iran, and as well as the Iranian social media. The initial focus of the protests grew to encompass the diverse grievances of Iranian women, with many removing and ritualistically burning their hijabs in front of cheering crowds. Across the diaspora, Iranian women were cutting their hair in solidarity. The 2022 wave of protest, or as many refer to it, a revolution led by women and girls, is, and I believe still continue and persisted, against something. These waves of protest was against something at the heart of the identity of Islamic Republic of Iran, the compulsory hijab or veiling. The wave of protests with women and girls at front of it was a historical, cultural, and social renaissance rooted in the 44 years of a struggle of Iranian women and a loud declaration of Generation Z and Alpha. Generation Alpha is the generation that was born and raised globally in 21st century. So this was a loud declaration of Generation Z and Alpha in Iran for fundamental human rights, freedom, and against authoritarianism, and recorded as one of the region's most inspiring social and cultural uprising with forward-looking strategies and the unifying slogan of woman, life, freedom that has brought the solidarity of all Iranians from Baluchistan on the border of Iran and Pakistan to Kurdistan on the border of Iran and Turkey and Iraq, and from Gilan to Khuzestan on the Persian Gulf, demanding accountability and justice. The social and cultural renaissance in Iran was filled with forward-looking and groundbreaking intellectuals and artists manifested hope and sparked a fire for a better future in the heart of millions of Iranians. Political bodies of the generation born and raised in the last 44 years prior to the uprising revolted against the law depriving them of their dignity, freedom, choice, security, and fundamental economic, social, and political rights. Indeed, people in position of power in the Islamic Republic of Iran have systematically denied dignity, freedom, and justice to Iranian people, particularly women and girls. The regressive gender policies of the last 44 years have not silenced fearless Generation Z and Alpha born and raised in Iran. What is happening in Iran is not only a political revolution, but also, and perhaps more importantly and significantly, a cultural and social renaissance with the brave women and girls at the forefront of it. The national slogan of Women, Life, Freedom, and forward-looking slogans is a forward-looking slogan that created synergy among Iranian all over Iran. Women, Life, Freedom indeed is a slogan for today, for Iran, for today, and for tomorrow, Iran. While Iran's first feminist uprising in response to a political system that subjugated women, referred to as gender apartheid, the protest quickly developed into a widespread political system that has no regard for basic human rights. The Islamic Republic's response to protests has been extensive and horrific violence, including executions. Gen Z, or Generation Z in Iran, as in other countries, is a globalized generation whose experience and worldwide view are in part driven by exposure to internet and social media since they were born. They're actually online native or digital native, they call it. They see a double standard in society, how the government elite live well while the rest of the country struggle to get by. The Zoomer, as they are being called in Iran, witness government mismanagement and corruption and rise in repression. The protesters reflected the exhaustion of the Islamic Republic and are outspoken and express their views and thoughts. They feel caught. Their future in Islamic Republic in position of power is bleak, and they want to take control of their future. The pluralistic nature of Gen Z, these are characteristics of Generation Z globally, from United States to Iran to Singapore to China. Globally, they share these characteristics. The pluralistic nature of Gen Z, their connection with their generation all over the world, made it harder to govern them than previous generations. They are a highly collaborative cohort that cares deeply about others and have a pragmatic attitude and how to address a set of inherited issues like climate change. In 2021, Iranians between age 10 and 24 accounted for 20% of the nearly 88 million population. So Iran, like many other countries in the region, I don't like the terminology of Middle East because it's a colonial-centric terminology, when that area was the Middle East of England. So I refer to it as West Asia, basically. Zoomers grew up more connected, better educated, and more socially active than previous generations. They became known as digital native because they grew up immersed in the internet and social media. They became savvier about the freedom enjoyed by their counterparts elsewhere in the world. Through their phones and satellite TV, Gen Z has been exposed to other ways of living, where girls and women are able to make choices about their appearance and who they want to be in life, how they want to live their life. In 2020, some 84% of Iran's population use internet. Iran has one of the highest number of internet users in the region, compared with just 16% a decade earlier. So in 1 decade, from 16% rise to 84% internet user in Iran. Sarina Esmailzadeh, a 16 years old vlogger, you know, we all know the terminology of blogger. Vlogger is the one that they post video of themselves on internet, not writing, so they call it vlogger. So Sarina Esmailzadeh, a 16 years old vlogger who was allegedly beaten to death on September 22 last year, 2022, had posted 4 months earlier this video. Quote, "We ask ourselves, why aren't we having fun like the young people in New York and Los Angeles?" This is a 16 years old posting a video saying that. In YouTube video, she said, we are in need of joy and recreation, good spirit, good vibes, good energy. In order to have these, we need freedom," unquote. So she was, video was that she's talking to her, you know, circle of friends on YouTube, was posted 4 months before she was killed by police in the protest. The 2000 protests cannot be seen in isolation from the wave of protests that preceded them. Iran has been multiple eruptions of protests over the past years, many fueled by desperation over economic difficulties. With a deteriorating economy and rampant corruption, as well as the impact of international economic sanction, the cycle of protests have become more frequent since the Green Movement that many of you may remember in 2009. In 2018, protests arose from public concern over economic situation. In 2019, demonstrations were sparked by massive increase in fuel prices. In 2022, early months of 2022, people took to the street against price hike of staple foods. I have to mention that the average inflation in Iran is 18%, and Iran as a rich country, 57% of Iranians are considered have malnutrition, suffering from malnutrition. All these misery and desperation share an underlying dissatisfaction with the unresponsiveness of Islamic Republic to the needs and aspiration of its citizens. The fact is that Iran is facing a perfect storm of simultaneous crisis of social, cultural, economic, political, and environmental. Although the Women Life Freedom protests were not as deadly as those in 2019, when more than 1,500 people were killed, they have been nationwide spread across social classes, universities, the streets, and even junior high and elementary schools, and was the biggest challenge to the government of Iran since the Islamic Revolution in 1979. At least last year, during these waves of protests, 537 people, including 68 minors under the age of 18, were killed in the protests. And as a result of the government's intervention of the protests, and and more than 22,000 people were arrested. These arrests were made in 134 cities and towns and 132 universities that they were participating in these protests. By October of 2022, more than 41% of the 22,000 people detained by security forces during the protest were under age of 20. And 48% were between 20 and 35. This is government records. So I just want to emphasize that women and girls were at the forefront of this wave of protest, but younger women and young people and young men supporting women. I didn't, oh, okay. Okay, I have to go faster. I just want to also mention, I have written some, but I want to mention that globally, people all over the world heard the voice of Iranian people. Demonstrations in solidarity was engaged from United States to Chile, from Cairo to Iraq to Afghanistan to Pakistan, all over the world. In many countries, I have a paper on that in all over the world, women and people supported the struggle of Iranian people. I also want to mention quickly, maybe in Q&A we can talk more about it, that globally also two significant things happen in response to these waves of protest. One is that when financially international community heard the voice of Iranian people, the UN Human Rights Council passed a resolution on establishing an independent international fact-finding mission to investigate human rights violations in Iran that they are currently working. 3 people were appointed by Human Rights Council. All 3 are women, human rights defender, very prestigious people in the world that they are currently working on the case of Iran. And they issued 3 press releases. The July 5th press release of this commission, Human Rights Council Commission, it's very, very interesting. I brought it with me. If needed, I can share some of it with you. But this commission, this investigating commission, has made several requests to Iranian government, but never received a response. And they are continuing to work, gathering data, but Iranian government is not helping them. It's responsible. And the other things that was great that happened, Iran for 4 times was part of the Commission on Status of Women at UN, which I attend every year. I know Sisi was involved with that. And this year also Iran was part of the Commission on the Status of Women. And for the first time in history, Iran was expelled from that. And they had to take a vote. And of course, we were watching it on TV because it was being live broadcast. And of the countries that voted no on Iran, the biggest name was Federation of Russian Government. So they voted against that, and the resolution was introduced by U.S. ambassador in United Nations. So I want to stop here and finish it with the quote from Arundhati Roy. She said, "Another world is not only possible, she is on her way, and on a quiet day, I can hear her breathing." Thank you. Okay, this photo, I put some pictures together for a slide, and this photo this is an event organized by Sudi Farrokhnian. Sudi Jan, stand up. She's an Iranian, my good friend, and an Iranian activist for human rights and women's issue in Orange County. This picture, which I raised my hand like that, I was one of the speakers, and it was organized on Human Rights Day 2022 in Orange County. And so this is one of the pictures. Some of these pictures are pictures of protest of women and men in other countries. And these are all have different countries from Turkey to Cairo to Chile to Mexico, all over the world. It was protests were taken. Let's go to the end of it. Because I use the word Renaissance, and I do believe this was a cultural and social Renaissance, because these young people rising up, bringing their new idea and bringing wonderful art. There are so much artwork around women life freedom, which I selected from here. These are all artwork that was made last year by different younger people all over the world or in Iran for the woman life freedom. So I thought, since we were talking of Renaissance, maybe it's good to highlight the art that came with this wave of protest. Thank you. Yes. And I want to explain this. This is a picture that an Iranian woman rights activist in Germany, she sent it to me last night, and there are these are the pictures of Iranian activists and people, women in prison, and 110 of these are being killed in the protests and other in Iranian prison. But these are thousands of women put together in this beautiful picture of a tree, and it's by Frida Razavi, and she sent it to me last night from Germany. I said I'll include it in the PowerPoint. Thank you.
And Ella, both you and I are.
Yes, and both me and Sudi's pictures are part of this too.
We have a lot of really good questions here. The first question I'm going to read is, can Iranian women get advanced degrees, own property, divorce their husbands, work in government? And what does freedom mean in these terms?
I can now hold on to this so we can. This is easier because we can.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. Actually, Iran is one of the countries that has the biggest gap between educated student and educated women and women in the workforce. Iran has around 65% of higher education are women, whereas the percentage of women in the workforce is around 12 to 15%. I wrote a paper on that for American Association of University Women, because this is a huge gap, close to 50% of educated Iranian that they don't have any way to be engaged in the workforce. The government of Iran also, like some of the Eastern European, interestingly, countries, they actually provide policies that encourage women to stay at home and have a big family. So they give them like 6 months staying at home, resting after every pregnancy. You know, they want to encourage women to stay at home and not working. So that's one of the policies that been in place. They can divorce, although divorce, there is a documentary, you may want to check it out, Divorce Iranian Style. It's a documentary that shows Iranian women can divorce, but it's a very lengthy process. It's not as easy as you can imagine here, although here I don't think it's that easy too. But, and then they can own property also. What else was there?
Work in government.
They can work in government if ideologically they are supporting the people in position of power. So it's a very ideological divide between who can work in government and who cannot.
So, and the last part of the question is, what does freedom mean to these people?
Freedom means different things to different people, of course, but to majority of people participating in these waves of protest, I think particularly younger people, personal freedom. The freedom to dress as they want, the freedom to choose how they want to live their life, For example, in Iranian society, having boyfriend and girlfriend is not allowed because they're not married. However, there is a good number of younger people, they live together and they call it white marriages, ازدواج سفید, meaning that they live together with their partner under the skin of the city, so nobody should know. But so everything that government doesn't allow, it's happening, but it's happening under the skin of society, you know, so nobody can find out.
Okay, another question. Why do you think the resistance led by women has lasted while previous resistances have not?
It lasted because Iranian women who wants personal freedom, who wants economic rights, who wants political rights, social rights are half of the society. Right now, one of the issues, if you search Iran and hijab, for example, on your Google, you're going to see many, many reports that Iranian government is trying to impose again the restrict codes for hijab. And despite of that, you can see younger people and sometimes older people like my age or in between, they are walking in the streets of Tehran without any hijab. And then the morality police come and want to arrest them. And people come to help the person to run away and not being arrested. So there is a fight going on in Iran on daily basis. And right now, even some people in position of power, they are afraid of this imposition of mandatory hijab because they say, we're not going to win this battle because thousands and thousands of younger people, they don't afraid to be arrested. They come without hijab and they walk on the street, and then if they are at the risk of being arrested, then people come, and sometimes they get arrested, but they don't have enough prison to keep all these women. It's half of the society. I mean, not exactly, but many younger people in big cities are participating in these waves of protest.
Okay, there are a couple of related questions. One is, how frequently are young people arrested now that the spotlight is on them since last year? Mm-hmm. And the other is, how far do you think the government will go in trying to suppress these protests?
Well, that's a question that I think nobody knows, but definitely the government is taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back in terms of imposing the mandatory hijab, which they are now focusing on it. They're now focusing on controlling younger people. And they are fearless. I use the word fearless truly because they are fearless of being arrested. You know, they feel that they are at the end of the rope, you know, they have to do it. And they don't fear arrest. Even in elementary school or middle schools, during these waves of protests, students were standing in front of Khamenei's picture and showing middle finger. You know, that happened. That happened in middle schools in Iran. So people, it's such a widespread feeling of dissatisfaction with this, with the power structure in Iran that unless they rely on violence to control, then there is no other way to control it. And in 1 month from now, on 16 and 17 of September, the anniversary of these waves of protests is coming up, and who knows what's going to happen during the anniversary. Of course, Iranian in diaspora also organizing for protest, and 24 Iranian independent women organizations globally are organizing a conference at the conference center of Cal State Long Beach. The conference is going to be in Farsi, but there are going to be lots of art, and there are going to be one wine and cheese and art show also, probably on September 15 at Calcit Long Beach.
Okay. A couple of people asked about certain current events. One is, one person is asking about an article in the New York Times on the showing of the movie Barbie in Saudi Arabia. And can that movie be even seen in Iran? Another question is, there was a resistance that took place last week during a Shiite religious celebration. Can you comment on that?
Okay, good questions. I haven't seen Barbie because my daughter from Germany, she was visiting. She said, "Mom, don't go see Barbie. I want to come and we see it together." So she's actually arriving tonight that I'm here, but we're gonna go see Barbie. All the movies are available in Iran. Again, under the black market. Every movie that's here, before we see it, they see it. So Barbie gonna go to Iran too. And it's gonna be celebrated, I think, in Iran by younger people. And what was the ritual? Right. The Muharram is a Shia, now they call it religious festival, because I think Iranians were inspired by Latin America, of religious festivals in Latin America. So they call it religious festival. This year, for the very first time, many of the people participating in that morning of Muharram and the traditional, people do love traditional. They cook food, they spread it, they walk on the street, they slogan, different things. But this year, for the very first time in 44 years, the religious people were chanting things against the government. So in some cities, there were also some arrests. So I just want to give you this image that the Islamic Republic, for the last 44 years, layer by layers, people were separating from that core. And now that core, that very, very tight circle, is against majority of the people of Iran, particularly women and girls. So there is no going back in government pleasing or convincing people that we are serving your best interest. There is no going back. Even if the bloodshed, even if 22,000 were being arrested, and maybe more, the people will resist and persist.
So we have several questions that are related. Okay, one person comments that, as we know, it's very hard to change. Religious clerics feel their power will be taken away. So the questions people are asking is, what will be necessary for real change to succeed? And what can we do to help advance women's rights in Iran? Several people have asked that. And then another question, maybe it's tangential, but, I didn't bring it. Okay, I'll bring it later. Okay.
I do believe that change in any country comes from within. So although some people, we have here, as citizens of United States, we experienced Afghanistan and we experienced Iraq. You can export democracy. Democracy should be organic and made by the people of that nation. So that's why neither, of course, I'm a peace activist against any military engagement in any country, but they are, like always in opposition movements, they are people that raising hope from outside. I was in Afghanistan when last time Taliban was ousted. And I know that unless these movements are deep-rooted and consciousness of the people raised that they stand up and pay the price for changing the government, it's not going to be lasting for a long time. So I do not hope that, for example, hypothetically, a country, European country or United States attack Iran like President Trump was suggesting several times, to occupy Iran and change the government. Those not going to bring democracy to Iran. It should be organic from within groups and organizations inside Iran, and there are enough force and potential in Iran. Intellectuals and younger people are very bright. I learned from them, from their tweets, from their presence on social media, and I'm very hopeful for future of Iran, future that is being shaped by Iranian people, not being a democracy, so-called, being imported from outside. So that's, having said that, what was the other?
It's what can we do?
Okay, that's a different lecture. What can we do? But I think solidarity between people is number one. Among other things, I think solidarity between American women and Iranian women. What we are doing right now, that a group of citizens want to learn about the struggle of Iranian women and girls for freedom and justice and human rights. That is the core of it, solidarity. Of course, the governments can play, and that's going to be a different, I'm writing a piece on feminist foreign policy and Iran, because feminist foreign policy is a concept that was presented by Sweden in 2014. Many countries are now embracing feminist foreign policy and redefining some of the terminologies like security, like peace, from a gender-sensitive lens. So I think having progressive people, minorities, women, having a representation in government is definitely impact foreign policy. And that is what we need in this society, because even here for all of us, January 6th was a wake-up. Democracy here is at risk too. So how can we help with democracy outside? We have to protect democracy here in order to help democracy in Iran and other countries.
Okay, another question and a related comment. One person says, this movement is new to me. How do I stay informed as to progress? And then someone else suggests that you mention the Frontline Iranian Uprising video that people can watch.
Right, there are many good sources for keeping the information. There are Twitter account. I would be happy to provide a list of websites or publications that reflecting the true struggle of Iranian people, or Twitters or social media, that I would be happy to provide it to someone that if anybody wants to follow that and know what's happening in Iran, they can get that and follow up if they wish to do so.
Okay, so this is these are more general foreign relations questions. Why are good relations with Iran important to America? Mm-hmm. And related to that, someone is asking about the prisoner exchange deal and what was the community reaction. And then there's a third question, which is, can you explain the positive and negative facts on releasing money to Iran to free U.S. citizens from prison?
That's a tough question. Of course, countries having good relation with each other is very important. So as an Iranian American, I do hope for a day that Iran and United States have good good relation, because when I was born and raised in Tehran, we had, during the Shah, it was U.S. was supporting the Shah of Iran, and the relation, Iranian people always never had, or at least to my understanding, never had negative feeling towards American. Never had negative feelings toward American. Unfortunately, now anybody in opposition to Islamic Republic, again, have the same sentiments. But U.S. also needs to play its role in the region, and lots of news coming up, which we need to check it out to see if it's true. Right now, I hear that there are negotiations going on quietly. I don't know if it's true, or we're gonna hear that. The release of funds for prisoners, that has been one of the strategies of Islamic Republic, that arrests dual citizenship. Whenever someone has like Iranian American, German American, Swedish American, when they go to Iran, they arrest them and then they use them as a chip for exchange for money or for exchange for other prisoners. So that has been a strategy. But releasing funds for humanitarian purposes, that is a tough question for both Iran and Afghanistan. By the way, today is the second anniversary of Taliban taking over Kabul again. And I have lots of emotion for Afghan women also, because their situation is far worse than Iranian women, because they're not even allowed to go to high school or attend universities or any basic human rights. So I have a lot of feel for Afghan people, and help many of them as an Iranian woman in the community. But that's a tough question, releasing funds for Iran and Afghanistan for humanitarian, because on one hand, people are suffering, the rate of inflation, lack of access to basic food items is scarce in Iran and Afghanistan. But on the other hand, we all know that when money is released to a government, they're gonna use it the way they want it. They're going to invest it in the projects that they wanted. They want to feed the people in their own circle, not the single mothers that the number of significant in Iran, single poor mother, majority of them are under poverty line. So it's a tough question.
Okay. We are asked to remember that this year the Grammy has added a new section, Best Song for Social Change, and the song Barya was nominated, and Jill Biden gave that award. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, that was really a cheerful moment for many of the Iranian. It was that song Baraye means for, and that song was by not a very famous songwriter and artist, but because it felt so much, it felt by all Iranian. We all were singing it in the, was it a Sudi 200,000 Iranian protests in LA? We all were singing it all over the world. So yes, when I say renaissance of cultural and social, art was a big part of shaping this movement and keeping the people moving forward in their plights for equality and justice.
I want to see how much time we have left. Can you mentioned in your talk the UN's fact-finding mission to investigate what's going on in Iran. Can you talk more about that?
Right, the UN fact-finding mission and UN Human Rights Council, that was a response to the violence that the government of Iran and all the people were killed, and even the underage, under the 18, the children were killed in the wave of the protests. So that process is still ongoing. They're supposed to provide their final report for this stage on March of 2024. As I said, they had 3 press releases, and I checked that, and part of that movement, because they ask all the Iranian that in confidence provide information to the UN, and Women's Intercultural Network, which I'm chair of it, we facilitate that, of getting these grievances from people and submitting to UN. So partially we are playing a role in it. And yeah, and there are 3 women that assigned to this project. 2 of them, I believe, they are from Muslim majority societies, and one of them is from Latin America.
Okay, I think we need one more round of applause for all the amazing work that Elahi Amani is doing.